Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today, our special guest is returning Glenview author and neighbor, Natalie Tilghman, with her essay published in United Disability Services publication, Kaleidoscope. Welcome back, Natalie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, since we saw you last, you've been working on essays and short stories.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about where you've been?
Yeah, so I've mostly, I've been doing a lot of writing, some longer things, but also shorter pieces that I've worked on in between, mostly on essays, just about life, parenting, those sorts of topics.
Yeah, and you have to keep submitting them, or is that
Yes.
the kind of life of an author?
Yes. So typically I will submit to many different literary magazines based on whatever their guidelines are. They're usually some working guidelines that a literary magazine will put out. So word count, specific subject, sometimes a theme, and you kind of work within whatever that framework is.
Yeah, I see. In your essay, Portrait with a Seagull, right? Yeah, can you tell us, this was selected in an award-winning publication. So, and I think that, let's see, can you tell us about the process of that?
Sure. Sure. So when I first wrote this essay, it was actually quite a bit longer, and I have a writing group, and I got some feedback from the writing group that it would be helpful for it to be shorter and a tighter piece. And so I worked for a while to get it a little bit tighter and shorter, and work on the imagery and scenery. And then I submitted it to several different magazines, mostly national magazines, but and then waited to hear back. I didn't hear back from Kaleidoscope for a couple months. So but it was worth
nail
the wait.
biting.
Yeah, we're worth the wait, you know. And you get a lot of rejections too in the process when you're putting your essay out there, and it's a matter of finding the right match, the right fit, the right audience for the work, you know.
And I learned that you were selected out of 400 works, so that is a lot of rejections for the other authors. But
Yeah. Writing is kind of one of those fields where there's a lot of rejection, and perseverance is really important because it's kind of a long game, and you've got to stick with it and believe in your words, even when other people don't, you know.
Yes.
So
You have to, the long game,
Yeah.
Really look at your work as one of many that you're continuing to submit. Wow. So let's see, and how, I read about your book or your essay in the Facebook. So how have you been doing your, book marketing on your own, or how does?
Yeah, I mostly do it on my own, and admittedly, I'm probably not as great as I should be on social media, having not grown up in that era, but I do try to keep people aware of different projects I'm working on and books that I like, and also just my life in general, outside of writing.
Which is inspiration, right?
Yeah.
Parenting is your inspiration.
Yeah, my kids, and so, but my one of my funner things that I did is just worked with somebody on creating a new website, and that was really fun too, because it was just interesting to think about who I am as a writer and what I want to communicate to people through my website, and fun to collaborate with somebody on that. So.
And you mentioned a writers group. How long have you been part of a writers group?
So we started during the pandemic, and we're all parents, and we are all located in different parts of the country, East Coast, and then actually also Toronto, so Canada too, Okay. And we meet and probably on like a monthly basis and discuss different pieces and workshop it. So we give one another critique and
input,
and then both written and oral critique. So it's been great because we've known each other so long, so we know each other's personal lives, but also our professional lives, and it's been a great source of support and just to help me improve as a writer too.
Oh, that sounds like a quintessential element for any author, right? To have a support group and looking at each other's strengths and weaknesses and borrow from that. Yeah. So can you tell us the backdrop of this essay? Where did you come to Seagull?
So we had a family vacation where we go pretty much every year to Ocean City, New Jersey, and with my parents and my kids and my husband. And there was this one summer where my middle son was particularly interested in seagulls, and he loved them so much. He was about 5, and he would chase them down the beach, and we lost him. And it's a very busy beach, so it was very hard to find him and scary. We eventually found him, but he still was very obsessed and interested with these birds. So we had a photo shoot, a family photo shoot on the beach, and
it's just hard enough to coordinate.
It's
right?
so
Everybody
hard. Yes, and it's nerve-wracking,
Yeah.
and it's one of the things I kind of dislike doing it, and then. I just thought to myself when we get there, I really hope there are no seagulls, and there were tons of them everywhere. So, but it actually ended up being this wonderful moment because we have this picture from the day where the whole family is looking up at a seagull, and he's kind of reaching up for the seagull, and that picture really inspired the essay to me because in a lot of ways it showed how my middle son is the glue for our family, and he really helps us to see things in the world that we don't always notice and
perhaps appreciate, because you were seeing the seagulls as a part of chaos and and disruptive to my through photo, right?
And he saw the beauty of this bird, and it literally just kind of like hovered, almost like it was held by a string, right? In the wind, right, looking at us, and it was beautiful,
Yes.
So
and the photographer being able to incorporate that, right?
It was amazing. But it just kind of goes to show too that you can find inspiration when you're writing in almost anything, a picture, a song, a piece of art, anything can really be inspiration. So.
It could be a whole essay.
Yeah.
And how do you keep the essay short? I mean, it is so hard to write and succinctly. So.
Yeah, usually I tend to be a little wordy, and so my first drafts tend to be longer, and then I'll go back and really do a lot of cutting, and I do a lot of looking line by line at words and seeing what I can cut and still retain the meaning. And that's typically how I whittle down a bigger piece. And but the writing group is also very helpful because they can help with that and suggest places where perhaps there's a little fat that can be trimmed and things of that matter. So I think getting feedback is so important for writers. It's really what helps you get a piece to where you want it to be.
Yeah, and you can grow from that you can perhaps transfer to another piece of work.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you enjoy the most about your preparation work? I mean, this is perhaps not just this one, but other essays.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my favorite part of writing is often, I do a lot of work where I need to do research, and I love research. And I did do some research for this essay as well, just about seagulls.
Really? Okay,
seagulls, because I wanted to understand kind of their behaviors and why a seagull might have been interested in us. And
they're so clever too.
They're
right?
so smart.
Yeah.
They're really smart birds, and that's kind of one of the things that I learned. And I learned just a bunch of other really interesting facts about them that I hadn't, I didn't know before. So I often like to do a little bit of research before I start writing about a topic. And to me, that's like one of the one of the funnest parts, because it gives you the inspiration to keep going, and you can always return to it in the middle of a piece when you're kind of feeling as though you're not sure where to go with a piece, or you're losing motivation or interest in it. You can return to the research, and sometimes that gives you that first spark you had to continue.
Yeah. I can see that, because you're trying to write like a personal story, and then maybe the details of Seagull, right, could help you make your story stronger.
Yeah.
So well, tell us about some of the other essays. I mean, because many writers that watch our program may not have the time to devote to a chapter or a book, but essays are a good format. Like, tell us about that kind of format writing.
Yeah. I think there are so many opportunities for people to publish essays. And I've written essay about when my son was very young. I wrote about his interest in food, and with my Italian-American background, just how important food was in our family, and how we were trying to teach him a love of food. And that was just something short I wrote and submitted to NACI, and they published it. So there's lots of different opportunities to get your work out there and to connect with readers.
Food as in the texture, like experimenting with things
food,
they are new to them?
Yes, exactly. Like, especially when they're toddlers, and and you need to kind of, just try it. And fostering like that love of food and of a meal being almost like a ritual and sacred family time.
Social, social event.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes, there's so many topics, right? That's short enough for us to address in an essay level. So let's see, Natalie, what did you discover about yourself, perhaps, in this Seagull experience?
Yeah. So I discovered. I thought I hated seagulls, and I actually really appreciate seagulls, and just the way that they are in the world. I think sometimes we can overlook how beautiful animals are that we see all the time. And what my son's gift to me was to stop and to see the animal through new eyes, and realize its beauty, even though it was something that's common, that steals fries off the boardwalk and takes people's lunches.
They don't sound very good either, right?
Yeah,
they're
they
right?
loud but then I was learning how complicated their calls are, and that they really mean a lot of different things. And to me, that it was really interesting to learn about the ways in which a seagull is a very interesting animal as well, bird.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, so we think of them on the beach as a pest, right?
And a nuisance,
But it's amazing to appreciate the intelligence, and perhaps it was reaching out to your son from a spiritual level. So it's wonderful to see that your essay brought in the seagull as a extra character in this family project.
Yeah.
So what are some reader responses you received?
Yeah, I heard from a couple parents who who also have kids who have special needs, and they were just moved by the essay and felt like they could relate. But I also heard from parents who have neurotypical kids who also could relate to many of the challenges of doing a photo shoot or, you know, the challenges of vacationing with really little kids and losing someone on the beach. So,
that's just a terrifying experience.
it really is. It really is. So just connecting with people, you know, on that level of being a parent and these universal experiences that so many of us have. But it was especially important for me to also connect with parents of children who have special needs. And so I was happy that, you know, I heard from people who connected on that level too.
Yeah. And I think building connections are probably the most rewarding thing you can receive as an author.
Yeah, because then you realize that that someone felt less alone in the experience of life when they read your words. And really, as a writer, that's all I really set out to do, is just to connect with people and to share experience of life, you know.
Yes,
so
yes. And lots of people don't have, lots of people don't have time to think about or process it, and then reading your work help them, right? To have that calmness.
Right, and maybe even to like think about the world differently, you know, and think about like nature differently, or think about many different things, you know, parenting, things like that. So, yeah.
Well, it's good to hear about your many experiences as a writer. Do you have something you can inspire or advise other writers?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say the biggest thing with writing is to look for inspiration everywhere, because you really never know where inspiration will be. I never thought, for instance, that it would show up at a family photo shoot in the shape of a seagull. But sometimes it's just a song, sometimes it's a book, sometimes it's a newspaper article. Inspiration is really everywhere, and I often take notes on my phone of different things I find myself interested in that I might want to write about.
And you mentioned artwork.
Yep.
Or a photo.
Yep, artwork. Yep, photo, sculptures, a person who interests you, a conversation that interests you. There's so many things, right? And oftentimes we have our blinders on and are going about our day, but inspiration is really everywhere and in every moment if you slow down. And kind of as a writer, your job is to notice the small moments and the bigger implications of small moments, right? So.
Well, that's very well put. I think that's a great moment for us to pay attention to, right? Instead of all the to-do lists and the checklist of things, right?
Yeah, and just be more aware, you know, of what's going on around you, because there are so many things that are beautiful. And sometimes like looking a little deeper and researching something that interests you, and you might learn that, you know, for instance, the seagull, the preconceived notions you have are completely different than, and you gain a new appreciation for your subject too.
Yeah, and it's easier to do research now.
Yeah.
My goodness.
So much easier.
So
much easier.
Yeah. So Natalie, what are some challenges in essay writing versus your usual prose format?
Yeah, so you know, it's interesting. I sometimes struggle with essays with how much of myself and my real life to reveal to an audience. I think that's something that probably any memoir writer or anybody who's writing personal essay struggles with a little. And I think also fiction is so different because it's presumed to be invented, right? And when the facts aren't convenient, you can't really change them in an essay, versus in fiction, you can change things to
take off a different direction.
Yeah, and so much of my work is done in fiction that it's an interesting format to be confined to facts and to what really happened, and make meaning out of things that really happened through an essay. So you know, you have more anonymity when you're writing fiction, and also a certain amount of creative freedom, but essay writing also allows you to also connect deeply with people and share a part of yourself that someone else might also find helpful. So, yeah.
I would think that being able to write fiction is also some way healing, because you can change the ending, right? For
Yes.
something that happened. So you can
Yes.
introduce a character that saves the day.
Yes, exactly. And I think you can think about, I mean, I do a lot of my fictional work is in with history, and you can think about how things might have been different if there had been, you know, different characters experiencing a certain historical moment,
Yes.
how that person might have responded and maybe even changed the course of history in the way they responded. So it's fun to have that creative freedom and to be able to be inventive and just really think through a different perspective that is so different than yours is really fun.
Well, what connects you to Natalie? I know we live on the same street, so.
Yeah.
But,
What connects me personally to Glenview now, I would say my two favorite places are the library and the grind. Those are my two favorites. The library, just because it's so beautiful and there's so many resources there.
Oh, yeah.
And oftentimes you see people in the community there and they're enjoying books too and the resources that are available. And the grind, just because, again, it's kind of like a nice community
Yes, and
center.
there's a buzz to it,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
people
So I often write there. I feel
yes.
like they've been part of my writing journey because I've been writing there a lot since I came to Glenview. So.
That's a great tips for us. And Natalie, what are you working on now? I think you're going for something long, right?
Yeah, so I'm working on a historical fiction novel that won a Rona Jaffe Award in 2015, the draft of it, and I've continued working on it since then, and it's loosely based on my grandmother and great aunt's experiences as civilians during the rise of fascism in Italy, but also World War II. And it takes place in Abruzzo, which is a region that not as many people are familiar with, and that was, right? Particularly hard hit after the armistice when Italy changed sides in World War II and the Germans were fleeing. Saw a lot of fighting and a lot of the towns were destroyed. And so I am, I'm writing about a protagonist who survives an assault by a German soldier with the protection of a traditional Abruzzese amulet called a presentosa. I'm wearing one, and she only to have the valuable charm stolen by the American husband that she's forced to marry. So it's
very exciting.
Yeah, that's
story.
kind of what's next.
We look forward to having you back and talk about your newest book.
Well, I would love to. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us. Watch us next time on Off the Shelf.